It was not supposed to be in that hardware store. His original stop had been the lumber yard 2 miles east on Ventura Boulevard, but the yard had closed early. A plumbing emergency, a handwritten sign on the door. No further explanation. And had pulled into Ridgeway Hardware on Moore Park Street in Studio City because it was the next thing on the block and he needed sandpaper, grade 120, and a replacement hinge. It was in the fastener aisle reading the back of a blister pack when he heard the boy. The boy was 2 aisles over, 8 years old, maybe 9. He was talking to someone, a store employee, from the sound of it, and he was explaining, in the particular careful voice that children use when they are repeating something they have been told many times, that he needed to know how to fix a cabinet door. The employee said that was a job for his dad. There was a pause. Then the boy said, "I don't have one of those." Not angry, not sad, just factual, the way a child states a fact they have already finished grieving. Keanu set down the blister pack. Ridgeway Hardware on Moore Park Street has been in the same location since 1974. It is the kind of hardware store that has not been renovated so much as accumulated. A slow layering of signage, stock, and institutional memory that covers every available surface from floor to the drop ceiling. 12 feet above. The aisles are narrow. Two adults with shopping baskets cannot pass each other comfortably. The floors are the original concrete, worn smooth in the traffic lanes by 50 years of foot traffic. The owner, a man named Filocada, has worked behind the counter since he was 16, when the store belonged to his father. He inherited it at 31, 2 years after his father died, and has run it in a manner that is best described as immovable. The same hours, the same hand-lettered price tags, the same policy of not carrying anything he doesn't understand himself. When a customer asks a question Phil cannot answer, he says so, which is why the people who shop at Ridgeway Hardware keep coming back. The store does not have a website. It does not have a loyalty program. It has a corkboard near the register, with business cards from plumbers, electricians, and general contractors that Phil has personally vetted, and it has a handwritten sign above the register that reads, "If you bought it here and it didn't work, bring it back. We'll figure it out." On a Saturday afternoon in late October, the store had 7 customers. 6 of them were adults. One of them was a boy named Marcus Webb, 9 years old, who had ridden his bike 4.5 blocks from the apartment on Colfax Avenue, where he lived with his mother and his grandmother and a cat named Bus, and who had a cabinet door in his mind and a problem he intended to solve. Marcus Webb had been trying to solve things since he was 5. He was the kind of child who, when something in the apartment stopped working, did not wait to be told it couldn't be fixed. It took the flashlight apart when the switch stopped clicking and reassembled it with the contacts bent outward the way he'd seen in a YouTube video. And it worked. Machined the wobbly kitchen table leg with a folded piece of cardboard and 3 layers of electrical tape, and his grandmother stopped putting her coffee down carefully. It was 9 years old, and he had a toolkit, a real one, not a toy, that he kept under his bed in a plastic bin with a snapshot lid, organized by type. His mother, Diane Webb, was 34. She worked as a medical billing specialist for a group practice in Van Nuys, Monday through Friday, 7 to 4. She was good at her job, and she had been passed over for a promotion twice in 3 years by people who were not better at it than she was. And she had stopped expecting the third time to be different. And she had decided instead to save enough money that the job would one day be optional. She was $9 million toward a goal she had not told anyone the number of. Marcus's father had left when Marcus was 14 months old. Diane did not speak badly of him in Marcus's hearing. She answered Marcus's questions directly and honestly, using the words "he left and it wasn't about you and some people are not ready to be what their children need." And she said these things with a steadiness that cost her more than Marcus knew. He had stopped asking questions about his father when he was 7, not because he had stopped wondering, but because he was old enough to understand that the question had an ending, and the ending was the same every time. What Marcus had, in place of the thing he did not have, was a grandmother named Ruth, who called him her engineer, and a mother who never once made him feel like a burden, and a set of YouTube channels about woodworking and home repair and practical mechanics. That he watched the way other children watched cartoons. What he did not have was someone to show him, in person, with actual tools, in an actual space, how to fix the things he saw in the world that needed fixing. The cabinet door in the kitchen had been sticking for 3 months. The bottom hinge had pulled away from the frame. He could see the gap, could see the screw hole stripped by years of the door hanging slightly wrong. He had watched 4 videos about it. He understood the problem. He needed to know about the right size wood screw and whether you used a filler first or just went straight to the larger thread. It had ridden 4.5 blocks to ask. Keanu came around the end of the aisle slowly. The boy was standing in front of the hinges display, a rotating rack of small envelopes, each containing hardware sorted by size and finish. The store employee, a young man of about 22, named Devin, who had been working at Ridgeway for 8 months and who was not unkind, had moved on to assist someone else, leaving the boy alone with the rack and his question. Keanu stopped a few feet away, the way you stop when you are not sure if you have been invited into something. "Cabinet door?" he said. Marcos looked at him, the same half-second of recognition, then the immediate priority of the present problem. The hinge pulled out of the frame, Marcos said. "The screw holes are stripped." Keanu nodded. He looked at the rack. "Do you know what size screws are in there now?" "No," Marcos said. "I couldn't get them out. They're really stripped." "Okay," Keanu said. "Do you know how long the door has been hanging wrong? Like, did it start suddenly or slowly?" Marcos thought about it. "Slowly," he said. "I think for a long time." Keanu looked at the rack again. He pulled off an envelope. Longer screws, same thread gauge. If it went slowly, the wood's probably fatigued around the hole. You could try a longer screw. Same gauge, just longer. It catches fresh wood below the stripped part. Or you could fill the hole first. "What's filling the hole?" "Toothpicks," Keanu said. Marcus stared at him. "Seriously," Keanu said. "You pack wooden toothpicks into the hole with a little wood glue. Let it dry. Trim them flush. The wood fills in, and the original screw catches again like the hole is new." He paused. "It sounds too easy. It works every time." Marcus was quiet for a moment. He was processing the information the way he processed all information. Methodically, checking it against what he already knew. Looking for the gap. "Why does that work?" he said. Keanu looked at him. "What do you mean? Why does the wood from the toothpick hold if the original wood didn't?" There was a pause. Then Keanu said, "That is a genuinely good question." He thought about it for a moment. Actually thought about it, not the way adults think about children's questions when they are waiting for the child to accept a partial answer, but the way a person thinks when they are surprised into actually not knowing something. "I think it's the grain direction," he said. "The toothpick wood runs perpendicular to the hole. But honestly, I am not 100% sure. I just know it works." Marcus nodded slowly. This answer, the honest incomplete one, satisfied him in a way that a confident wrong answer would not have. "What kind of wood glue?" Marcus said. They were in the adhesives aisle 4 minutes later. They were in the store for 41 minutes. This was not planned. It accumulated the way conversations with curious children accumulate when the adult on the other end is paying actual attention. The cabinet door led to a broader question about hinges in general, which led to the difference between butt hinges and European cup hinges, which led to a detour to the door hardware section, which led Marcus to a question about why old houses had different hardware than new ones, which was a question Keanu could not fully answer, and said so, which caused Marcus to take out his phone and look it up, and to read the answer aloud in the careful, slightly halting way that children read when they are not yet sure which words are important. Phil Okada watched this from behind the counter. He had been watching since the man in the gray hoodie came around the end of the aisle and crouched down to look at the hinge display next to the boy. He recognized the man. He did not say anything. He watched the way you watch something that is going correctly. At the register, Keanu paid for the sandpaper and the hinge he had come for, and for Marcus's wood screws and wood glue and a small box of toothpicks. Marcus said he had money. Keanu sighed he knew. He paid anyway. Outside, Marcus unlocked his bike from the rack by the door. Keanu stood on the sidewalk. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. "Sure," Keanu said. "Do you actually fix things? Like at home?" "Yeah." Keanu said. "I do." "What's the hardest thing you fixed?" Keanu thought about it. "A motorcycle engine," he said. "Took me 3 weeks and I had to redo the first week." Marcus considered this. "What did you do wrong the first time?" "I was going too fast," Keanu said. "I skipped a step because I thought I understood it already. You can't do that with engines. Marcus nodded. This information went somewhere it was going to stay. Okay, Marcus said. He put on his helmet, a blue one, slightly too large, with a small sticker of a wrench on the left side that was starting to peel at one corner. Thanks for the toothpick thing. Let me know if it works, Keanu said. Marcos looked at him. I don't know how to do that. Fair, Keanu said. Marcos rode away. Keanu watched him go until he turned the corner at the end of the block. He did not expect to see Marcos again. 2 weeks later, he was back at Ridgeway for a different errand. A specific bolt size he could not find at the lumberyard. It was at the register when Phil Okada said, without particular ceremony, the kid came back. Keanu looked up. The one from a few weeks ago, Phil said. He fixed his cabinet door. He came in to show me a photo. He slid his phone across the counter. The photo was slightly blurry, taken at close range, upward angle, the way a 9-year-old photographs something they're proud of. The cabinet door, fully closed, the hinge flush against the frame. Keanu looked at it for a moment. He also asked me something, Phil said. What? Phil was quiet for a beat. He asked if there was anyone who came in regularly who knew how to fix things, who might want to show him. He paused. He sighed kind of formally, like he'd thought about how to ask. Keanu was quiet. I told him I'd ask around, Phil said. They looked at each other. I'm in the store most Saturdays, Keanu said. 10 to noon, usually, before the afternoon crowds. Phil nodded. I'll let him know. The arrangement that developed over the following months was not called anything. It did not have a name, because naming it would have made it into something it was not, a program, a mentorship, a formal commitment that required forms and liability and the specific weight of expectation. What it was, most Saturdays, between 10 and noon, Marcus Webb rode his bike to Ridgeway Hardware. Sometimes Keanu was there, sometimes he was not. When he was, they talked about whatever Marcus had been working on or thinking about that week. Marcus fixed the towel rack in the bathroom. He fixed a drawer that wouldn't close. He found a loose floorboard in the hallway and spent 3 weeks reading about subflooring before deciding the repair was beyond his current tools, but documenting what he'd learned in a notebook he'd started keeping for that purpose. The notebook was not Keanu's suggestion. It was Marcus's own instinct. He showed it to Keanu one Saturday, a black composition book, half full, with diagrams in the margins and lists of questions he'd answered and questions he hadn't answered yet. Keanu looked through it without rushing. This is good, he said. This is really good, Marcus said. It helps me not forget what I already know. Keanu looked at that sentence in the notebook. Marcus had written it on the inside front cover as a kind of purpose statement, in pencil, the handwriting slightly uneven, the way 9-year-old handwriting is uneven. Can I borrow that line? He said. Marcus looked at him. For what? I don't know yet, Keanu said. But it's a good one. Diane Webb knew something had shifted before she knew what it was. It was the Saturdays. Marcus had always found ways to be busy. The toolkit under the bed, the YouTube channels, the methodical approach to every step drawer, and flickering light switch that she found quietly extraordinary in a child who had not yet turned 10. But the Saturdays had a different quality now. It came home with a kind of tiredness that is not exhaustion, but satiation, the specific tiredness of a person who has used themselves fully and well. She asked him about it one evening, while he was eating. He told her about the hardware store, about the man who had shown him the toothpick trick, about the Saturdays. She was quiet for a moment. Does he know your name? She asked. Yes, Marcos said, and I know his. What is it? Marcos told her. She set down her fork. She did not say anything for a long moment. She looked at her son, who was eating dinner and explaining, with the matter-of-fact thoroughness of a 9-year-old who does not yet understand why this information might require a different delivery, that the man from the movies came to a hardware store on Saturdays and they talked about fixing things. Marcus, she said finally. What? Does he know? Do you talk about... She paused. Does he treat you well? Marcus looked at her with the expression children make when they have been asked a question that they find, with respect, not very complicated. Yeah, he said. He listens. She picked her fork back up. She ate the rest of her dinner without saying much. Later that night, after Marcus was in bed, she sat in the kitchen with her coffee, and she felt something that she did not have a clean word for. a kind of compound emotion. Gratitude braided with grief, braided with something that was not quite hope, but was close to it. The feeling of watching your child receive something you had wanted to give them, but could not. From a source you had not arranged. She did not reach out to him. She understood, instinctively, that the arrangement functioned because it was not formal. Because it was just two people in a hardware store who found each other's company useful, and that formalizing it would change the thing it was. She told her mother. Ruth said, God sends people the way Ruth said most things, with a certainty that did not require evidence. Diane said, I think you might be right. The Saturdays continued for 7 months. In March, Marcus turned 10. He told Keanu about it on the Saturday before his birthday, in the matter-of-fact way he told most things. Keanu sighed. 10 is a good number. Why? Double digits, Keanu said. And it's round. Things that are round are easier to build on. Marcus considered this. That doesn't make sense mathematically, he said. No, Keanu agreed. It doesn't. On the Saturday after his birthday, Marcus arrived at the store and Phil Okada directed him to the back, to the small workshop space Phil used for assembly and minor repairs, where Keanu was already set up with a project, a small wooden step stool, in pieces, with all the hardware laid out and labeled. They had not told Marcus about it in advance. Marcus stood at the workbench and looked at the pieces. He looked at the labels. He looked at Keanu. We're building it, Keanu said. From scratch? From the pieces, Keanu said, which is basically the same thing. They spent 3 hours on it. It was not a fast project. There were measurements to check and angles to sand and 2 points where Marcus made an error and had to stop and work backward to find where the problem had started. The same principle as the motorcycle engine, which Marcus had not forgotten, and which Keanu had not needed to mention because Marcus applied it himself. At the end of the 3 hours, the step stool was assembled and sanded and solid, and Marcus set it on the floor and stood on it, testing the weight distribution the way you test a repair. Not because you think it will fail, but because you want to confirm it won't. It held. For your mom, Keanu said, or your grandmother, whoever needs it. Marcus stepped down. He picked it up and turned it over and looked at the joints. Can I put a finish on it? What kind? I looked it up, Marcus said. I think a water-based polyurethane. 2 coats. It'd protect it and you can still see the grain. Keanu looked at him. You did that before today? He wanted to be ready, Marcus said, in case we got to that part. The step stool lives in the kitchen of the apartment on Colfax Avenue, under the cabinet where Diane keeps the serving dishes she only needs twice a year. Ruth uses it to reach the top shelf. Marcus refinished it himself. 2 coats of water-based polyurethane, applied with a foam brush, sanded lightly between coats the way the tutorial said. A is 11 now. The notebook has been replaced by a second notebook, which is half full. He has started watching videos about electrical work, which Diane has mixed feelings about, and which Keanu, when Marcos mentioned it, said was a reasonable next step as long as he started with low-voltage circuits and did not touch anything connected to the main panel until he was older, which is practical advice and which Marcus has written down. He asked Keanu once, on a Saturday in November, what he should do when he didn't have someone to ask. Keanu sighed. You write down the question. You find 2 sources that disagree. Then you find a third source and figure out why the first 2 disagree. By the end of that, you usually know more than any of them. Marcus wrote that down too. I have been thinking about what this story is actually about. Because it is easy to say it is about a famous person doing a kind thing. That is true, and it matters. But I do not think that is the deepest thing. I think this story is about a 9-year-old boy who asked the right question to the right person on the right Saturday. And what made all 3 of those things true at the same time was that neither of them were looking for anything except what was directly in front of them. Marcus wanted to know about his cabinet door. Keanu wanted sandpaper. The whole rest of it grew from 2 people being fully present in a fastener's aisle for 41 minutes. I think about the questions I do not ask because I assume the person I might ask is too busy, or too important, or somewhere other than exactly where they are standing. I think about the adults who were in that store for the same 41 minutes and walked past that aisle and did not stop, not because they were cruel, but because they were in their own heads and going somewhere. Presence is not complicated, but it is not easy either. It requires deciding that the thing in front of you is the thing that matters right now. Marcos knew how to ask. He had been asking questions his whole life of YouTube channels and store employees and the inside of flashlights he had taken apart. What changed was finding someone who asked back. I do not think we give enough credit to the people who ask back. Who hear the child say, I don't have one of those, factually, the way children say the things they have finished grieving and decide not to walk away. He keep coming back to that aisle, to the 41 minutes, to the toothpick trick, and the honest incomplete answer, and the boy who went home and wrote down, it helps me not forget what I already know. I think that sentence is worth the whole story. Maybe it is worth more. This story is fictional, inspired by Keanu Reeves's well-known reputation for genuine, unhurried kindness toward people he encounters in ordinary places. Tell me what you took from this one. Not what you think the lesson is supposed to be, what you actually took. Drop it in the comments. I read all of them. If there's a kid in your life who asks questions like Marcus, or if you were that kid once, and someone stopped, share this with them. It's the kind of story that means something different depending on where you're standing when you read it. Subscribe. More stories are coming. See you in the next one.